guys, I want to talk to you today about rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I have notes because I will not remember everything I want to tell you if I don't. So this is one of the areas of ADHD I am most passionate about talking about. Spoiler alert, I am not going to tell you to stop caring what people think, which I find is often the beginning and end of RSD advice. I think that if you can stick with me till the end, you're going to leave feeling a lot more hopeful. I work with clients on this every day. I'm a therapist who specializes in ADHD. I have ADHD. My name is Susie. So first, let's talk about what RSD, which is the shorthand for rejection sensitivity dysphoria, looks like. Because I think if you hear some of the examples and you are an ADHDer, and maybe even if you're not, you're going to see yourself in these. So, first type of reaction I see is, for example, you are at work and say you get like negative feedback, but not necessarily terrible feedback. It might be negative feedback in between two compliments, or just someone saying, hey, like, where is that? I thought you were going to have it done by today. So kind of just putting that in context. And when you receive it, like your full body is hijacked. So this can look like, your heart starts racing, you get really warm, you can't focus on anything like beyond the normal kind of ADHD difficulty focusing. This is like your brain is not capable of moving beyond the pain of that RSD trigger. For me, when this happens, I get my peripheral vision gets fuzzy, and even like someone talking to me, like I'm nodding, but it sounds like they're like far away. It's gonna show up a little different for everybody, but the key point there is your body goes into emergency mode. It's fight or flight, and it's often from something that, on the outside doesn't seem that bad and can just wreck your whole day. Another way I see it show up that I think people often don't recognize as RSD, but I find is very textbook for how ADHD social anxiety shows up, is you go out with your friends, you have a great time, you're social, you're talking, and then maybe a few hours later, you start raking over the entire experience with a fine-tooth comb, finding evidence that, you were weird, you were judged, you were misunderstood. So this is like the kind of ruminating or snapping awake at 3 a.m, wanting to send the friend like a, sorry, I was weird, or I didn't mean this that way type of text. Which can also, it's not that full body, dysphoria, but it's still pretty distressing and takes a lot of mental energy. One more example I'll give you is, in a healthy relationship, we tell each other what we need. There's feedback. And sometimes in a romantic relationship, people with ADHD will be, it'll be like relatively innocuous feedback, even delivered kindly. For example, hey, like you always dump your coat on the ground when you come in the door. Can you put it on the coat rack? And, one day that might be totally fine. And another day that'll feel like, oh my gosh, my spouse hates me. I'm such a burden. So it just, again, will feel like these kind of normal, just human feedback will feel really negative and really distressing. So if this is starting to sound like you, and especially if you have ADHD, I am not particularly surprised. My bad joke with my clients is always there are two types of ADHDers. There are people who know they struggle with RSD, and those who have yet to figure out but do still struggle with RSD. They just don't call it that yet. So what do we do about it? There are different things that you can do at each stage. And a really important thing is being able to recognize what stage you're at. But before we even do that, is recognizing when this is happening for you. So I know that sounds kind of obvious when I say it, but often when we are in the middle of this, we are not naming that is what's going on. And it is really powerful, even if you're still distressed by a situation, but if you're able to say, I am experiencing an RSD trigger, um, that is actually already going to give you like a little bit of distance, a little bit of neutrality, or a little bit of acceptance of like, this is happening. And that can be one thing that helps us return to a calm state. But also, more importantly, is even if that's not helpful at all, if you're able to recognize when it's happening, you are able to save yourself first causing further harm, whether to yourself or a relationship. And, more importantly, just being able to give yourself the care you need, because you do deserve care in these situations. Like, please take that away. So I'm kind of fast forwarding to this is growth work, which is kind of the third stage of things to do with rejection sensitivity. I'll explain that better. But being able to, if you have pen and paper, even doing a little journaling after this, but start thinking about when you are most vulnerable to rejection sensitivity. Most of us have physical things. I mean, at a minimum, being tired is always going to be an extra vulnerability to rejection sensitivity. For people who have cycles right before your period, I mean, like almost textbook, like, I've heard so many people joking, like, oh, I think everyone hates me, and then my period starts. So, and there's probably other physical things that you could add to your list that, yours might be different than mine, but that's why it's really helpful to do this work now and think about what those are. But also situational. So a huge one that I see for my clients is feeling misunderstood. For most of us with rejection sensitivity, if we say something, like for instance, that like someone doesn't like, but we stand 10 toes down by it, good Lord, stand 10 toes down behind it, and, stand by what we said and mean what we said and wanted to communicate that. And even if someone doesn't like it, that's not necessarily going to be super dysregulating. It could be, but less likely so. But a thing I find across the board with ADHDers is if we are feeling misunderstood, there can be like this compulsion to correct misunderstandings. And it kind of makes sense because, I mean, even me, when I'm talking, I'm like all over the place, even with my little outline here. So it is pretty easy to be misunderstood with ADHD. But then we also have like that really high sensitivity quite often where, they look a little bit like they're judging me. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm realizing that they might have thought I meant this instead of this. Or especially if someone, outwardly does I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of right now, but misunderstand your intentions, and assume that you did mean harm or meant something offensive. So feeling misunderstood is a huge one. And again, that's like knowing that is, if you're in a situation where you're feeling misunderstood, you're at least able to recognize, hey, I'm pretty vulnerable to feeling rejection sensitivity right now. One that is true for me that I will admit, I thought I was alone in this, and then I do ADHD support groups, and I shared this with my group, and they all had the same thing, so I will share it with you, is when you are trying to help in some way and you accidentally make it worse. And this can show up in very small, very big ways. I know for me, sometimes it's just like rearranging something in the house and accidentally breaking something. But like definitely like, trying to help a friend and somehow actually accidentally causing them more problems. You get the idea, but that can be a big vulnerability for RSD. So those are just some to get you started. I would really encourage, like I said, journaling on that more and thinking about all of the times that you might be more vulnerable to it, because the same thing can happen to you on 2 different days and it's not likely to cause the same reaction. Okay, beyond that, think about what are your signs when you're in each stage. So I don't think I explained this well earlier, but the first example I gave, when you're at work and you have this full body reaction, I call it like SOS, that's emergency stage. This is when your nervous system is in fight or flight. So what are the signs your body gives you when you're in that? Because it's really helpful to know you're in that state, because first of all, what's going to help you is going to be different than what it is when you're more in the ruminating and your thoughts are spiraling. And yeah, your body doesn't feel good, but it's not like that high hijack state. Different things are going to work in that point. But in that first, like, whole body hijacked nervous system SOS state, it is so distressing that what we naturally try to do is fix it because we're trying so hard to spare ourselves from that pain. So what you'll see people in that situation is they often make the situation worse, whether it's just working themselves up into even more of a tizzy, trying to tell themselves to think differently. Like, it is not within your capability probably in those moments to think differently right away. It's in your capability to think differently later. But when you're in that moment where your body is already in distress, arguing with yourself, arguing with other people, trying to like come up with a solution. Often this is when people start texting somebody too quick when they need to just leave it alone, or maybe they're with a friend who kind of gives some gentle feedback, and instead of being able to actually listen to that friend, they go into like over explaining. And again, it's like, it's not this selfish thing, even though that could be how it comes across. It's like trying desperately to not feel that distress. So I can't emphasize that enough. Like, this is not the time to fix things. And the final thing I'll say about that before I talk about what to actually do in those moments is when you are in fight or flight, your frontal lobe is like basically offline. So the part of your brain that can think about like, what does this person need? What is my past experiences with them? What did they actually say? What am I hearing that they didn't say? How can I communicate what I want to say? What's real, what isn't, it's just not available to you. So that is not a good time to make decisions. And that's not you failing. Like, that is how our bodies are supposed to work when our sympathetic nervous system is active. So what do we need in those moments is we need to take care of our body and our nervous system. Your job is to get your body out of fight or flight in that moment. It's not to fix things. It's not to analyze. It's not to decide if you're right or wrong. It is to get your body into a safer, more regulated state, even if it's just like a little bit. Because you deserve it, and because it's going to actually get you to the point, if there is anything that needs to be done, that you're in a better state to do it. So a lot of these body-based interventions seem really small, and they are, and they're not going to solve all of your problems, but they do work for getting you into your body, out of that sympathetic fight or flight nervous system state. So I'm just going to give you a couple, and I will expand on all of these points. I'm going to expand more in further videos, but I just want to give you all something you can use right away. So while you're talking to somebody, you can start wiggling your toes and just pay attention to the sensation of your toes wiggling. Feel your feet on the ground, or since I'm talking to ADHDers, first put your feet on the ground, because like me, you're probably sitting crisscross applesauce or in some crazy position. Put your feet on the ground. Feel the sensation of your feet on the ground. You can do that while still looking someone in the eye and listening to them. They don't have to know you're trying to do things to regulate your body. You can kind of rub your fingertips together. Try to feel the ridges of your fingertips. Even if you can't like really feel them, it's like a good little focus exercise to get you in your body. If you're able to get 10% more comfortable, just 10%, like you don't have to be totally comfortable. So I have kind of a list I scan for myself. It's going to be different for you. As silly as it sounds, like putting on chapstick or lip balm of some kind, because that is kind of regulating for me. Taking a sip of water, a huge one. Again, this comes up in my ADHD groups. It's like, if you can put on more comfortable pants, I swear everything is more manageable. I remember like one of my clients saying one time, like, normally the pants I was wearing would be fine, but in this situation they weren't. I think that's a very real thing. Like, if our clothes are not comfortable, they don't have to be deeply uncomfortable, but if we're like super agitated, that is one of the first things to fix. Like, look at your temperature. Typically cooling off is going to be most helpful. I have sometimes not even like overstimulated. It doesn't even have to be RSD, but like sometimes in like the middle of winter, and I don't normally like the cold, I will step outside like in just a t-shirt, because just like a couple minutes of cold air is very regulating. What else? See, this is why I took notes, because I feel like I had a couple more for you. Oh, if you have a breathing exercise that you already like and already do, or like a grounding exercise, you know, if you're going, what's a grounding exercise? Like, this is not the time to do it. When you're in distress, it's not the time to learn something new. This is why a lot of people think they don't like breathing exercises, because they do them when they are already dysregulated and they're trying to learn a new exercise when the brain is not in a place to learn, and it feels even more dysregulating. So, but if you have exercises like going through your senses, doing certain breathing exercises that you already like and have already practiced, that's a great time. Like, those are really powerful, because your brain goes, oh yes, I'm taking care of myself, I know this one. That list can be a mile long. We'll go back to it. So let's move on to the next stage. Now, this could either be like same trigger, a little further along. Maybe you're getting away from the people that are kind of associated with that rejection. Again, whether it's like perceived or an actual rejection. So it could be just you've gone through those like calming exercises, you're feeling still pretty upset, but now you're really thinking, and I wouldn't say you're thinking clearly, but you're not like in that deeply hijacked state, like where your thoughts aren't even making sense. This is more now when you're like overthinking, ruminating, and that is distressing as well. So this is when your journal is your friend, or your notes app, or whatever it is that you like to use. The thoughts need to get out of the head, because there's probably so many of them. It's like ADHD is not helping this part either. And this is where cognitive behavioral therapy is really helpful. If you have like a really strong negative reaction to CBT, hear me out for a second, because I find that a lot of neurodivergent people do, because they will feel like they are gaslighting themselves. And I think part of the issue there is they're trying to work with their thoughts in that first stage I'm talking about, when they're really hijacked. Or they think that it's about like telling yourself your thoughts are wrong. What I am talking about here is, if you're ruminating a lot, is write down every thought you're having about what happened. You know, even if seeing it in writing feels ridiculous, like if it's a thought that is distressing you, write them all down. And then kind of do like an evaluation of like, what do I know for sure, and what is my perception? So it's not so much about saying you're wrong. I'm gonna try to be succinct, because again, I could go on and on this, but like, if you are feeling really sad that your friend didn't seem interested in your story that you were so excited to tell, you don't need to tell yourself if it's right or wrong that you feel sad. You feel sad. So like, that is a fact. You are feeling sad. And there might be a fact that, okay, my friend didn't ask a lot of follow-up questions about the story, or they didn't really react, or they didn't show excitement on their face. Those are known things. And then also, you probably are having a lot of thoughts about like, you know, they don't like me, they don't think I'm interesting, I didn't tell the story well, my friendships always feel one-sided, like all of these things that it's helpful to write down, but also realize like, okay, like these are what my brain is doing, and these are what I know. This is also a really good time for self-compassion work. I think people get self-compassion confused with self-esteem. So I think when someone hears that, sometimes they say like, oh, like I'm supposed to write down 5 things I like about myself. I mean, if you want to, sure, if that's helpful, but that is not what I'm talking about here. Self-compassion is being a friend to yourself and acknowledging what you're feeling. So this is a time to say like, yeah, like, and this feels weird talking to yourself this way at first, but like, if you think talking to a friend, like, oh, I can tell like that is still really bothering you, like that is such a lonely feeling to feel, you know, to feel like that. I'm so sorry that that's happening. So you're just acknowledging the feeling. You're not arguing with it. Once again, I will expound more in future videos. I think I've already said that like 3 times. Okay, finally, my favorite part of everything is growth work. So these are things that you're not necessarily doing when you're actively bothered about something. I mean, I think that might be a challenge to some people, because we could probably all think of something we're worried about that can feel like, you know, emotional, interpersonal related. But in general, this is when you're actually able to like really change your relationship with yourself. And there are things that are actually effective here. And the goal is not that we're going to completely eliminate RSD, but more we're going to turn on the volume on it. I'm going to use that volume metaphor again in a moment. And just feel more empowered to recognize when it's coming and do something about it. So I mentioned earlier, like when you're actively triggered, that's not the time to practice a deep breathing exercise or a more complex nervous system exercise, or you'll see grounding exercises a lot, which are just like literally meant to ground your nervous system, ground you into your body. So if you're wanting to just work overall in your relationship with RSD, but it's not actively happening right then, is to make a regular practice of just trying new exercises and making note of what you like and kind of remembering like, okay, this is in my toolkit. And even if you're not upset, they still serve you. So like one, for example, is, that's pretty famous. It's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where it's, 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, going through your senses. That is still going to serve a purpose when you're completely calm. That is like just a couple more minutes and I'll wrap it up. I'm going to get into the part of growth work that I get the most excited about, that I see the most results with, and this is really rich work to do for all kinds of things in your life, but it's really impactful for rejection sensitivity, and that is values work. And I'll ask you I was skeptical when I heard that at first too, so if you can suspend your disbelief for a moment. Values work sounds kind of like moralizing or I don't know, like feel good. But anyway, what it actually is just getting really clear on who you are. So again, I can't remember if I said this earlier, the goal is to turn down the volume on what people think, not try to turn it off. You don't have to stop caring what people think. You're going to try to turn up the volume on what you think and who you are and how you measure yourself against your own values. And what I would say is you might surprise yourself if you sit down and do this. And I know you'll surprise yourself when you see its impact on rejection sensitivity, because I think we tend to think we know what's most important to us, but until we sit down and really do some work on it, we might not actually fully see ourselves. So what you're going to do is write down domains of your life. Some of the classic ones are going to be family, romantic relationships, social relationships, spirituality, if that feels like it applies, parenting, community, like your values around how you contribute to community and the human population. So these are all areas, these are not values. And in each area, you are going to write down what is most important to you. Just start brainstorming, just like any word that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be like this fully thought out, like my values are ABC. It's like you might be in social relationships and have like, inclusivity and curiosity and warmth and genuineness. You're just like writing down words that like are important to you in friendships. And one of the cool things is like some words will show up in every domain for you and some will be completely different. So then how this applies to rejection sensitivity is then you have a very clear picture of what's more important to you. And then you have like a framework for when your RSD gets triggered. Once your body is calm, you can then reflect back on like, how does this bounce off my values? And often, like using an example of a social interaction where you feel like you said something weird, or you weren't making sense, is if your values on friendship might be, I want to be kind, I want to be open, I want to be warm, I want people to feel like I'm a really safe person to talk to. You probably don't have a value that says I'm never weird ever. So stop making that the most important thing. Or even I'm never misunderstood. I never tell a story that doesn't go anywhere, that doesn't make sense to anybody. And instead, if you come away from a social interaction and that RSD is kind of pinging, you might realize like, okay, like, but I was really warm and I was a safe person. My friend opened up about something that was really hard for her, and I think I was a really safe person to talk to. That like completely changes the dynamic, because you're allowed to still be like a little embarrassed about something you said, but it is held within like this great ocean of those things that are important to you and the way you show up and the ways that like you can love yourself and love others. And even if you are running afoul of some of those values, even that is a much more healthy conversation to have with yourself. So it might be, I'm not feeling good after this interaction, and you realize like I was talking a lot of shit, and that was kind of against like what my values are and how I want to show up in the world. I really value positivity, and I was just like negative the whole time. Is that's like then giving you information of like, okay, how would I want to be different next time because this is important to my values, and that is so different than focusing so much on what someone else thinks. I also find that this work can make it clear when you actually feel like you owe someone an apology, as opposed to when you're apologizing for reassurance or apologizing to like ease the distress of RSD. So when you do that values check-in, you might realize like, I was kind of, I keep using curiosity. My friend was talking about something and I kind of jumped to a conclusion and I wasn't curious, and I actually do want to call her up and apologize. I wish I had been more curious when she was trying to open up about something. I don't know. Okay, I know this is really long. I really appreciate anyone who listened. I hope that if you did, it's because it was helpful. I see this every day in my practice. This stuff does work. I'm going to give you more, like I said, more direct exercises you can use, but I wanted this overview. If this resonates at all, I'll get a little more efficient, make my videos not quite so long. But give me a like and subscribe because I'm going to keep coming with content. Please comment and let me know what does resonate, what you notice with your RSD, and just the emotional side of ADHD in general, so that I can know more of what you might want to hear. Again, I'm Susie. I look forward to talking to y'all more soon.